Hearing this, Zillion's eyes widened in disbelief, furious. Damn, brat, don't get cocky. He couldn't believe it. His previous attack was one that even a typical 4-star Do D would have hesitated to face head-on, and yet little E had effortlessly neutralized it. This left Zillion completely stunned. At the moment, Zillion gripped his feathered fan tightly, unable to come up with a better strategy. All he could do was engage in a constant back and forth with little E, while keeping an eye on the other two battles. His hope was to delay the fight until Brother Lizzie or someone else could lend a hand. Then, that kid wouldn't stand a chance. Elsewhere, 10 registered disciples had surrounded Mu Feng and Lu Di, leaving no room for retreat. How about it? Feeling scared yet? Mu Feng asked Lu Di with a smirk. Both Mu Feng and Lu Di were late-stage 4-star Do D experts, and even they found it difficult to handle the pressure from the 10 opponents. Just barely. Lu Di replied with a slight grin. But don't you dare slack off, she added with a playful smile, as her green Do Chi began to spread out around her. That Do Chi is poisonous. Be careful. Among the 10 disciples, a few sharp-eyed ones immediately recognized the threat as soon as they saw Lu Di's green Do Chi, realizing that she was no pushover. Come at me, Mu Feng said, his Do Chi surging forth. It coalesced into a deep azure hue as a wooden sword materialized in his hand, his gaze cautious as he faced the 10 disciples. After all, these 10 registered disciples were top-tier 4-star Do D, and Mu Feng couldn't afford to let his guard down. One wrong move, and he'd be the one to fall. Heh, interesting little ones. An elder muttered from the grand hall, though no one seemed to notice. Attack! The 10 disciples said in unison, their combined Do Chi forming a massive beam of light, brimming with a terrifying aura as it surged towards Lu Di and Mu Feng. Lu Di mumbled something under her breath, while Mu Feng noticed several tiny snakes materializing around her. From these small creatures, Mu Feng sensed an incredibly dangerous aura. These were no ordinary serpents. Good. Mu Feng grinned, standing his ground. He knew that the space inside the grand hall was limited, and Lu Di was clearly preparing a powerful technique. He couldn't retreat now. Even against the combined might of the 10 disciples, Mu Feng felt no fear. His wooden sword glowed with deep azure light as he slashed towards the overwhelming beam of Do Chi aimed at them. Clash. As Mu Feng's azure light collided with the disciples' combined attack, a dazzling burst of sparks flew in all directions, signaling an intense confrontation. The next moment, Mu Feng smiled as his sword aura shattered under the pressure of the attack. The massive light beam was now on the verge of striking both Mu Feng and Lu Di. Go! Just as the situation turned dire, Lu Di completed her Do technique. 3 small, differently colored serpents appeared from nowhere, coiling around her body. With a whisper from Lu Di, the snakes shot forward to meet the incoming beam of light. Humph! Courting death! The 10 disciples sneered, intensifying their Do Chi input, causing the beam to swell even larger. In the blink of an eye, it collided with Lu Di's serpents. SSSSSS. The 3 serpents hissed softly, but from their small forms emanated an incredibly fearsome energy. They clashed violently with the beam of light, and to everyone's shock, the once unstoppable beam began to dissolve before their very eyes. Damn it! These snakes have terrifying corrosive power! The disciples yelled in panic as their combined strength crumbled. What kind of technique is this? It's so powerful. Mu Feng muttered, clearly amazed. The attack they had just faced was the combined force of 10 4-star Do D experts. Even if they hadn't gone all out, the power was still overwhelming. Yet, it had been neutralized so easily by Lu Di's 3 serpents. That's my secret, Lu Di said with a coy smile, offering no explanation. Xiao. Lu Di called out softly, her voice tinged with amusement. Bite them. The 3 small snakes, red, white, and green, hissed in response and darted towards the 10 disciples. Damn it! Don't let those snakes touch us, or we're in big trouble. The disciples yelled, scrambling to evade. Mu Feng and Lu Di took this chance to coordinate their movements, keeping their opponents on edge. This girl, Lu Di, must have some remarkable background. mused the Golden Dragon King. If I'm not mistaken, those 3 serpents are treasures of the Medusa royal family. Xiao Yin, observing the unusual power of Lu Di's technique, chose not to dwell on it. Useless. You're all useless. Li cursed angrily nearby. He was currently engaged in a fierce battle with Mu Yingying. Though Mu Yingying's azure flame energy was terrifying, Li's earth-attributed Do Qi offered him strong defense against her attacks. However, what shocked Li the most was Mu Yingying's resilience. Li prided himself on his strength. Even among early-stage 5-star Do Di, he rarely found a worthy opponent. But for some reason, every time he struck Mu Yingying, it felt as if he were hitting a sponge. It was incredibly frustrating for him. Li had initially believed he could finish off Mu Yingying quickly and then move on to help with the other 2 battles, ensuring a swift victory. If that happened, joining the Incense Pavilion would be within easy reach. But what he hadn't expected was just how tough Mu Yingying would be. Moreover, the 10 top-tier 4-star Do Di experts were being chased around by 2 people. This was an utter disgrace. They were up against only 2 late-stage 4-star Do Dis, and yet the 10 of them were being run ragged. This made Li furious. But in truth, he was unfairly blaming the 10 experts. Lu Di, with her royal Medusa bloodline and her extraordinary strength, was easily able to handle them. Her trio of serpents, coupled with her late-stage 4-star Do Di power, made even 5-star Do Di opponents no match for her. So dealing with 10 4-star Do Di experts was child's play. It seems this contest is about to reach a conclusion, Xiao Yin said with satisfaction as he observed the battles in the arena. However, he also noticed a flicker of rage in the eyes of the other registered disciples. These disciples don't look too pleased. With his immense soul power, Xiao Yin could sense the undercurrents in the grand hall. Most of the disciples were late-stage 4-star Do Di experts, with a few at the peak of the 4-star level. But clearly, those fighting in the 3 main battles represented the strongest among them. If they lost, their hopes of joining the Incense Pavilion would be dashed. It seems a major battle is inevitable, but, Xiao Yin thought, his hand tightening around the soft white glow he had been gathering for some time. In the palm of his hand, the glow came from the formation he had condensed using the core inscription of Divine Motion. Damn it! Who would have thought these newcomers would be so strong? Zillion cursed bitterly as he barely defended himself from Little Yi's relentless attacks. Little Yi, recently awakened as a fire spirit, was still unfamiliar with controlling the Do Qi within him. Zillion, with his early-stage 5-star Do Di strength, had inadvertently become the perfect training target for Little Yi. This isn't working, we can't just keep dodging. The 10-peak 4-star Do Di experts realized their predicament and prepared to counterattack. But they had already been battered by Lu Di's trio of serpents, their bodies marred by various degrees of injury. The wounds were clearly inflicted by the corrosive power of the snakes. Cough, cough. Lu Di coughed softly, then swiftly called her 3 serpents back. Are you all right? Mu Feng asked. I'm fine, just a bit drained from using so much Do Qi, Lu Di replied quietly. Leave the rest to me, Mu Feng said, his wooden sword glowing brightly with azure Do Qi. He began to chant under his breath. Yin-Yang 8 trigrams, the law of heaven and earth. Weaklings, fall back. Mu Feng roared fiercely as he unleashed a powerful surge of azure energy toward the 10 opponents. Retreat. The 10-peak 4-star Do Di experts quickly backed off, forming Do Qi barriers around themselves for protection. They knew full well that Mu Feng's attacks were not to be underestimated. Moreover, they had already been worn down by Lu Di's serpents, which had relentlessly sprayed poisonous Do Qi at them. To fend off the poison, they had been forced to expend large amounts of Do Qi, knowing that if the venom entered their bodies, the consequences would be dire. At best, they would suffer severe injuries. At worst, death would be imminent. Though they couldn't quite explain it, the 10 experts, with their peak 4-star Do Di senses, could tell that Lu Di's 3 serpents were far from ordinary. Given that the Medusa clan was known for raising powerful creatures capable of rivaling human experts, they couldn't afford to take any chances. Now, after expending so much energy dealing with Lu Di's snakes, they were in no shape to face Mu Feng's terrifying attack. Boom, boom, Boom! Mu Feng's powerful strikes landed, injuring some of the 10 disciples. But Mu Feng knew that while his attack was strong, it was scattered among 10 people. If he had faced a single opponent, he was confident he could have seriously injured them. But with 10 opponents, the power of his attack was greatly reduced. Damn it! Lizzie, noticing the state of the other 2 battles, could no longer wait. His aura surged as he forced Mu Yingying back, creating some distance between them. If that's how it's going to be, then don't blame us. Everyone form the array. Lizzie commanded. With his early-stage 5-star Do-D power and sharp senses, he could see that dragging out the battle would make victory nearly impossible for them. However, they weren't fighting alone. They had 128 people. They were a cohesive unit, and when it came to teamwork, these fighters, who had spent years hunting ghosts and often fought in groups, were highly coordinated. A deafening roar echoed throughout the grand hall as an overwhelming aura filled the air. What is this? Mu Yingying was momentarily stunned by the sight. What's happening? Mu Feng and Lu Di both noticed the 10 disciples they had been fighting retreating to join the larger group, leaving 127 warriors arrayed before them. Inside the grand hall, the 127 registered disciples gathered their Do Qi, forming an immense wall of energy that stretched 10 layers high. At the very top stood Lizzie, followed by Zillion and another unknown disciple. Below them stood the 10 disciples they had fought, with each layer forming a massive human barrier. Even Xiao couldn't help but be impressed by its imposing strength. Ghost-devouring formation, Lizzie shouted, and the overwhelming Do Qi instantly coalesced into a giant energy figure, enveloping all 127 registered disciples. Humph, I underestimated you before, Lizzie sneered. But now that we've combined our strength, you stand no chance. Accept your defeat. Despicable. Lu Di growled, her face darkening as she sensed the terrifying energy radiating from the giant energy figure. Well, it's survival of the fittest. This is our only chance to join the incense pavilion. So, if it means we have to resort to underhanded tactics, then so be it, as long as we win, Lizzie said calmly. Enough. It's time to end this, Lizzie declared. Remember last time? A pesky little demon broke my energy figure, costing us our chance to join the incense pavilion. But this year, it seems you won't be so lucky. Xiao noticed a sharp twitch in Lizzie's expression the moment he mentioned the little monster from last year. Clearly, the incident had left a deep impression on him. This is going to be trouble, Mu Feng muttered gravely. The terrifying energy giant they were facing seemed to contain power that would be impossible for the 5 of them to withstand. Don't worry, leave it to me, Xiao said with a calm smile, raising his hand and violently swinging it toward the massive energy giant. At the same time, Lizzie noticed a soft, milky white glow emanating from Xiao hand, heading straight for the energy giant formed by the 127 people. What is that? Lizzie said sharply, his keen eyes following Xiao every move. Just a show. Zillion replied impatiently. Be careful. That glow doesn't seem right. Lizzie cautioned, his tone more serious now. He hadn't gotten this far by relying on brute strength alone. Impressive. A core inscription formation master with 5,500 inscriptions, exclaimed an elder watching from the grand hall, utterly shocked at the smiling Xiao. At the same time, a look of pride spread across the elder's face. It seems this kid could be the perfect candidate for that plan, the elder mused with a smile. Whoosh! The milky white glow shot from Xiao hand toward the energy giant. In the next moment, as the glow neared, it unfurled like a scroll, transforming into a massive white flame formation that encircled the energy giant. This is a formation? Lizzie's pupils contracted sharply as he stared in disbelief at the terrifying ring of fiery energy surrounding his team. Lizzie tried to break free from the formation, but quickly realized it was futile. Even under the protection of the energy giant, he could feel the deadly power of the fire. The roaring flames tightly bound the energy giant, and the intense heat made even the weaker members of the group feel uneasy. It was clear this fire was no ordinary flame. A gift in return, Xiao said slowly to Lizzie. You damn brat. Li Zi roared in fury at Xiao Yin. The energy giant formed by 127 people was supposed to combine their dou qi into an unstoppable force, a formation they had used to annihilate countless ghosts with overwhelming power. The ghost-devouring formation had always been lethal. Yet, here they were, trapped by Xiao Yin. This, a formation master? Mu Xiuzi, standing nearby, was also taken aback. His previously calm expression revealed a flicker of astonishment. After Xiao Yin unleashed the milky white flames, Mu Xiuzi had recognized what he was seeing. It was no surprise that Mu Xiuzi was stunned. When Xiao Yin had first joined the human hall, Mu Xiuzi had learned that this Xiao Yin, despite being only a 4-star Dou Di, had managed to kill the twin ghost emperors, beings powerful enough to rival an 8-star Dou Di. Granted, the twin ghost emperors had been gravely injured, but they were still formidable foes. Mu Xiuzi had been curious to see what Xiao Yan's trump card might be. In addition, Mu Xiuzi knew that Xiao Yin wasn't just skilled in battle. He was also an extraordinary alchemist. Xiao Yin had already reached the peak of the first grade of the Emperor class, and he was only a step away from becoming a second-grade Emperor class alchemist. Formation masters were even rarer than alchemists. Now that Xiao Yin had revealed himself as one, it was no wonder Mu Xiuzi was so surprised. Quite the little monster indeed. Mu Xiuzi muttered to himself. It seems the human hall's long dormancy is about to end, he added, a glint of fiery ambition in his eyes. Mu Xiuzi was confident he could mold Xiao Yin into a great leader. Mu Xiuzi's gaze shifted suddenly, noticing a figure high above the grand hall. Though the figure was blurry, Mu Xiuzi's sharp eyes caught it. Bamboo Elder, you? Mu Xiuzi began, but the figure made a quiet gesture, signaling for him to stay silent and continue watching the battle. So even the Bamboo Elder is here, and as someone who cultivates spiritual power, it seems Xiao Yin has caught his attention as well. Mu Xiuzi smiled, though there was a hint of malice in his grin. The battle in the Grand Hall was now reaching its climax. Xiao Yan's companions gradually gathered around him, and in the next moment, Xiao Yin vanished from where he stood. As it was a formation, someone needed to control its core to unleash its full power. Inside the hall, the 127-person formation took up 10 zhang, 33 meters, of space, with the energy giant towering 10 zhang high. Xiao Yan's flame formation perfectly encircled the giant, neither too large nor too small. Boom, boom, boom. Break it, Li Zi commanded, urging the energy giant to attack the surrounding space. The energy giant, formed from the dou qi of 127 disciples, should have had no problem dealing with these 5 opponents. But no one had expected Xiao Yin to trap their final move with a formation of his own. The giant was now trapped within Xiao Yan's flame formation, surrounded by roaring flames. No matter how powerful Li Zi's attacks were, the formation remained unbroken. In fact, it seemed as though the flames were absorbing the energy. Stop wasting your strength. Admit defeat while you still can, Xiao Yin said calmly. Do you think I'm scared of your tricks? Li Zi shouted, but there was something strange about Xiao Yan's formation. It felt as if Xiao Yin was everywhere, and his voice echoed from all directions. Every formation has a core. If we destroy the core, the formation will collapse on its own, Zillion said, as if recalling something, turning to Li Zi. The core of the formation? Li Zi muttered, his gaze sweeping around. But with the massive energy giant surrounded by blazing white flames, finding the core was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Sigh. It's over. Xiao Yan's voice came calmly from all directions. The next moment, countless copies of Xiao Yan appeared within the formation. At once, all of the Xiao Yans opened their eyes, and a terrifying aura spread through the formation. Condense. With a soft hum, each of the Xiao Yans raised their hands in unison, and waves of terrifying dou qi surged from every one of them. Go! A voice of overwhelming pressure rang out, and the Xiao Yans unleashed their terrifying power toward the energy giant. Boom, boom, boom. Although the energy giant was formed by the combined dou qi of the disciples, trapped inside Xiao Yan's formation, its strength was greatly diminished. Under Xiao Yan's attacks, the giant shattered, crumbling to pieces. As the energy giant disintegrated, the morale of the hundreds of disciples collapsed, their once unified front falling apart like scattered sand. We lost? Lizzie struggled to utter the words. Though he didn't want to admit it, the young man named Xiao Yin was terrifyingly powerful. In the final moments of the fight, if Xiao Yin hadn't shown mercy, those hundreds of registered disciples would have been severely injured. Xiao Yin had truly won through strength and grace. We've lost? Lizzie's pale face etched itself into the minds of the other registered disciples. It was rare for them to see Lizzie show such emotion. His voice echoed through the grand hall, carrying a sense of unwillingness. The disciples surrounding Lizzie shared his feeling of frustration, but more than that, they were resigned. The current outcome was something none of them could have predicted. They had thought victory was assured, but this young man named Xiao Yin had turned the tide and defeated them all. Could it be that this Xiao Yin was truly the one who had killed the twin ghost emperors? Otherwise, how could he possess such terrifying combat strength? Though shocked, the reality of defeat was undeniable, and with it, they lost their chance to join the incense pavilion. Sigh. Let's go, Lizzie said quietly, standing up and speaking to the people beside him. Yeah, they replied, their expressions full of disappointment. Though they were unwilling, a loss was a loss. They could only train harder and wait for the next challenge. Well done, Mu Shuzi said as he stepped forward, clapping his hands slowly. Uncle Mu, is there really no more hope for them? Mu Yingying asked, her tone full of reluctance. From the battle just now, she had seen that while these registered disciples were a bit arrogant, their character wasn't bad. If they joined the incense pavilion, they could become a formidable force. Rules are rules, Mu Shuzi replied. These rules don't just apply in the incense pavilion. They are the same in every major sect. Many registered disciples have contributed greatly to their sects just to earn this title. Registered disciples have the right to challenge full disciples. If they succeed, they can join the sect. But if they fail, Mu Shuzi trailed off, his meaning clear. Sigh. Is there really no way around it? Mu Yingying shook her head as she looked at the defeated disciples. It was clear she genuinely felt for them and wasn't mocking them. Kindness is both a strength and a weakness, Xiao Yin murmured, watching Mu Yingying's actions. It was obvious that she had little experience with the harsh realities of the world and still possessed a pure, untainted heart. Lizzie, meanwhile, had taken notice of Mu Yingying's compassion. These disciples of the incense pavilion are truly deserving, not only for their strength but for their character, Lizzie remarked, his impression of the incense pavilion improving thanks to Mu Yingying's actions. Xiao Yin, you truly live up to your reputation as the one who killed the twin ghost emperors, Lizzie said after a moment of silence. Since they had lost, it was best to face defeat gracefully. I look forward to seeing you shine in the sect tournament, Lizzie added before leading the remaining registered disciples out of the hall. Staying there after their loss would only bring them more humiliation, so it was better to leave with some dignity. Haha, quite the group of impressive youngsters, Mu Shuzi said, turning to the 5 who remained in the hall. There's a rumor that every new disciple who joins a major sect receives a generous reward, Mu Feng said with a grin. I wonder what reward Uncle Mu has prepared for us. A few Do-Di pills would do nicely. You think Do-Di pills grow on trees? Mu Shuzi rolled his eyes at Mu Feng and scoffed. A Do-Di pill can raise anyone below the 5-star Do-Di level by a whole rank. A Do-Di can only take one in their lifetime. Taking more would result in resistance, rendering the pill ineffective. But that doesn't make the pill any less desirable. High-grade pills are hard to come by, and they're often used to cultivate the most talented disciples or descendants. Hearing this, the group chuckled. Though it wasn't a Do-Di pill, they were curious about what reward awaited them. So, what is it? Xiao Yin asked, his interest piqued. During the confrontation with the hundreds of registered disciples, Xiao Yin had realized that this was likely a trial arranged for them, just as Mu Shuzi had hinted. In the incense pavilion, if one wanted to obtain valuable resources, the first priority was to have enough strength. Only with sufficient power could one earn resources to rapidly improve themselves. The survival rules of the incense pavilion were harsh, but without a doubt, the quality of its disciples was exceptional. Do you know what the purpose of those people was just now? Mu Shuzi asked teasingly, dragging out the suspense. Those people probably had the qualifications to join the incense pavilion, so they wanted to use this opportunity to test us, Lu Di replied playfully. You're not wrong, Mu Shuzi nodded. But the main purpose was to select outstanding disciples. Our incense pavilion is divided into 3 halls, heaven, earth, and human, each with a very limited number of members. But without exception, every one of them is a unique powerhouse. Don't forget, the incense pavilion is one of the 9 great super sects. The number of people who want to join us is beyond count. So, instead of outright rejecting them, we grant them the status of registered disciples. Across the 9 great super sects, there are countless registered disciples, but the chances of any of them advancing to full discipleship is nearly 0. As for those registered disciples who fought against you, they represent only the tip of the iceberg of our incense pavilion's registered disciples. The purpose of challenges like these is twofold. First, to prove the excellence of those who can officially join us. Second, to rid those registered disciples of any delusions they may have about joining. Though our incense pavilion has few disciples, we would rather have none than admit those of mediocre talent. Accepting those without potential would not only waste their time but also tarnish the incense pavilion's reputation built over many years, Mu Shuzi said, his voice carrying an undeniable authority. So that's how it is, Xiao Yin murmured, shaking his head. He had already guessed much of what Mu Shuzi had said, but hearing it still stirred something within him. The incense pavilion was undoubtedly a place for cultivation, but it was also a gathering place for the most talented individuals. Xiao Yin firmly believed that anyone who could enter the incense pavilion would be no ordinary person. At that moment, Xiao Yin felt the passion for cultivation, long dormant inside him, reignite. He was confident that he could carve out a name for himself in this place filled with geniuses. All right, it's time to give you the reward for joining the sect. Are you ready? Mu Shuzi asked with a slow smile. Yes, the 5 responded in unison. Xiao Yin noticed that a door of light at the center of the hall was gradually opening, and a familiar power began to emanate from within.